Well, good morning. It is 2:43 a.m. on September the 13th, and this is a Christian Hearts Christian Fellowship online ministry. I know it's kind of early or late, depending on the time frame you're working with, but I wanted to touch base with y'all today. Before I get started, as you always know, that this is a church service. That means that every time you listen to these recordings or see me on YouTube or wherever you catch me on the internet, that is a live church service. So right now we're having church right now. Okay. So it's and before we get started, as you probably know, my name is Pastor Isaac David Bregman, and before we get started, I want y'all to understand that I'm here for y'all. I'm also, if you need to talk to me, get a hold of me at JesusHeartRadio at gmail.com. That is the email not only for me but for the Jesus Heart Radio that I do on YouTube. Look for that. Look for the one with the rose and the cross and all that. Looks like. And those are basically videos that I do where each video is done as if they were broadcast on a radio. So every time you see a video on there, you actually only get audio. You don't get video because you have to imagine that uh, channel or page on YouTube is a radio station. So with that being said, let's get into the day's service. All right. I want y'all to understand that there are times that I actually speak from the Bible, and there's times that I speak basically just from me having a chit chat with y'all, because sometimes you have to get to know your pastor, Brother Isaac David Bregman, either Brother Isaac or Brother David or Brother Bregman or Pastor Isaac or Pastor David or Pastor Bregman or Minister Isaac or Minister David or Minister Bregman or Preacher Isaac or Preacher David or Preacher Bregman. Whichever one you choose, or just Isaac or whatever you want to call me, or Sir. But anyways, but do keep in mind I'm also 36, so that should help you also with the thing. But anyway, with that being said, let's get into today's service. Okay, today's service is a chit-chat between me and you. Okay, we're going to talk about a bunch of subjects. Subject number one. Okay, for those of you that wonder my status, I am with a significant other, which means I am a man who has a female significant other. Okay, yes, we are living together. But when I say significant other, then you will say that has them a right to do that. Also, might as well say my wife, okay? Okay, there, I said it. And also, I want to tell y'all about me and my wife's crazy stories. Okay, I'm talking about crazy stories that you need to know about. If it's personal, I'm not going to tell it, because you know how everybody has a personal life and a public life. So my personal life I keep to myself. My public life is where something happened to me and I think y'all should know about it. So I'm going to tell y'all because it gets a message across. Okay? So with that being said, let's get into it. Well, today I want to talk about this. We live in an apartment. If you don't like that idea, if that runs you off from me, you shouldn't. You should be more worried about speaking the Lord's work. But let's get into the story. Well, we was moving from one place to another for reasons that are of our own reason. Nothing bad, just we needed to do so. Okay, so we do. We get here, and while we're here, hadn't been too long we've been here, this guy is sitting outside of the place, and do realize if you hear noises in the background, I do from time to time do my sermons from outside because sometimes it helps me to be more clear. And I don't know, being outside while doing this helps me sometimes. But anyway, the story goes like this. We was basically moving, and while moving, we ended up um meeting this guy, and for for the subject of painting you a picture with words, I will tell you what these people are so you can get a mental picture. He was a black gentleman, which he could have been a white guy, could have been any kind of guy. That's not the point. It's just you need to know. And because if you know me, I love everybody, and the only thing I have a problem with is attitudes. People in general, no, I have no problem with. Attitudes, that's another thing. But anyhow, the story goes is that we was here and we was leaving, trying to go to church one evening. And when we tried to do that, he stopped us and tried to talk to us. Well, he didn't really stop us. He just basically got our attention because he was sitting outside. Because you know how some apartments have like these little islands right between. It's like saying there's an island on one side where there's a like dirt and ground, and there's a big old tree growing from it, a pine tree or something. And then there'll be a speed bump, and on the other side of the speed bump, another island with another tree. He was sitting on the island, like on his side, near his side, and he got our attention. So we went talking to him, and so, well, I didn't go over there. It was like he's over there where he's sitting, and we're at the vehicle fixing to leave. So it ain't like I went over there literally, but so we was talking. So he basically introduced himself, wanted to know our names and all. So we did. From that day on, no lie, the second later on, I don't know what day it was. He came wanting sugar. Well, then he wanted to pay $1. Then he wanted to do it again. Well, by the second time, after a while, we had to realize that you gotta say no at some point, or they'll keep coming back and back and back. No matter man, woman, or child, no matter what background they have. And so then also, one day after he's been to the place trying to use the phone, it's one thing after another. He actually stopped this one time. I was walking around here and said something about multi-personalities, taking all these medicines and stuff. That's when a red light showed up, and it's like, oh, no, I got to be more careful. So then there's that. Now here's one about church. And do take notes, because your pastor, will say our preacher will say some things that will basically get you to thinking, okay, if I don't take notes, I won't understand his mental dictionary, his slang, his mannerisms. So when I say a cracked egg church, that is a church that is literally split apart, and all the good has come out of it, and all evil has tried to come in, or the church split apart, and there's a building who has nothing in it no more because it basically just got emptied out by sin. Well, a half-cracked egg church is one where it's half-cracked. The place is never emptied yet. It's not emptied yet. But so in that cracks, the bad seeps in and starts trying to work its way in full time. Like, give an example. I was going to a church before I met my wife, and if you want to know her name, ask me personally, because she's kind of the person that doesn't want everyone in the world to know her name until a certain point in history. It's not a secret thing. It's just how some people are. But anyway, story was, before I met her, I was going to a church where, through some interesting circumstances, and I'm going to protect people by not saying their names and how I met some of them. But through some interesting situations, I met some people, and one of them was a pastor. Well, I went to the church, which happened to be in my hometown that I came from, I was born and raised in. I, I'm still living in the county I came from, but I'm not in the town that I came from. So what happened was I would go over there to church, and it seemed like a good thing to do. It was matter of fact a low country boil one near one uh near one New Year's. And then what happened was while doing this, I got to liking the church, and the next thing I know, I decided to join. Well, my mom decided later on to be a part of the church too. Later on, well, as time went on, things were going good. Then all of a sudden, the preacher started going downhill with his attitude. He started saying, and I by that time I'd done been friends with him, and my friend slash pastor at that time, he was getting this attitude where he said one day that God told him it's time. He thinks God said, or God did say to close the gate, shut the door, and he didn't know what the message was behind that. But then later on, he said one day he slammed his hand down, said it was a dead church. Then act like he got a message on his phone, and that's exactly what he was looking for, the message on the phone, and he left. He did not come back for a while until he came back visiting, became a visiting preacher there. So then, next thing you know, well, one Wednesday night they decided to have a vote to decide if he was going to come back or not full time. But do remember that before they had this vote, there were other preachers visiting that church, and we thought one of them would be the next pastor. Well, next thing you know, well, they had a vote one Wednesday night, which they were doing that on purpose so that a lot of people could not have a say so in it. They should have. So then they had this rigged, you could tell, because people had come into the church that night that had not been there in a while. They So they had their vote. The devil had his way. The preacher came back, knowing good and well. He said what God said, and it's like him coming back is calling God a liar. So then, before this vote ever came, me and my wife were visiting other churches to decide if they were what we needed. Well, started seeing one that seemed like the right one for us. So we visited that one, and we thought, we like this one. So after this mess went down, we said, nope, we're going to keep trying out, see if this church is what we need. So at the point now, we're visiting a church. We've done it once or twice, and I'm getting pretty satisfied with it. I'm starting to wonder, but I don't know about her decision. But there you go. Now, I'll talk to y'all later. Have a nice day, have a nice evening, and God bless you.